Chilly here with Sirius Taurus Moon. This is Jupiter hour, Saturn day. Jupiter is 21 degrees Cancer, Moon 15 degrees Taurus, and Mercury ruling the ascendant at 27 degrees Taurus. The midheaven was crossing Deneb Algedy, and Saturn in Aries. So this is a nice Saturday walk, and I think about the many ways in which the very consciousness, the very I am of people began to be, how should I say, within the I am of a person, when people deal with people that are not a part of their I am. And these people are not friendly, benevolent, loving, respectful, honoring, even of the boundaries of the sense of self. And they try to, how should I say that? I don't know what they try, but their consciousness, their I am, their mind is basically, how should I say that? Fungal. I'm not joking. It's like, if you think about a fungal infection, it's something that is not supposed to even grow in the body. And then it wants food and it wants, um, you know, and it's kind of like, hey, these consciousnesses or people or entities are not, they were not even supposed to be within the boundaries of that body. Now, what does it do when, let's say, a person has a fungal infection? It drains the energy. Now, this is an environmental issue of the consciousnesses, of the I am, of the sense of self, because Aries is sovereignty. And the fungal infection here has to do with attempts to subjugate the I am of people. And this is where, if Aquarius or Pluto in Aquarius is architecture, Aries sextile, but there is an attempt to try to enforce people to be in a particular place or in a particular even sense of self that is incompatible with anything that Aquarius and Aries even mean, which is the architecture that accommodates, that built the buildings, the structures, the water infrastructure in a way that supports each and every I am. Sovereignly. There is an impediment on the sovereignty of people to later try to present something as a charity that isn't. And attempt to categorize. Think about people try to tell a person they can choose to be whoever they want, but none of the choices that they present is okay. And when all the implications of those secret rituals are exposed, like the investments of people not yielding when they worked hard, that doesn't have an excuse. The challenges of people to be feeling safe and free in society, where these are the people that said no to corruption at every single workplace. These are the people that refuse to put people in debt and then charge prime plus human trafficking for that debt. People walk in cities and They say, okay, what do people think that they're, it's kind of like cutting people's wings and then say, oh, fly away from here. What did they think would happen? Like they really think they're gonna put people, let's say, in the street or whatnot, and these people are just gonna what, stand there when they're not even able to stand and like, um, and then what? They're gonna have like a business running or housing running. That's just gonna be like okay. And they try to justify that by what? And this very artificial type of structure, when we think about technology, technology is supposed to accommodate for life. And this very artificial structure is presented as the ways of the world. No, it's not. It's not nature, but it's also not the technology that improves upon the quality of life. We see that with the crisis of the boomers. They were benefited, and then their being benefited was reliant upon future generations not having the chance, where they were not seeing that, because when their parents were growing up, their parents worked and they were just like finding what to do with themselves. Now they thought it's normal to raise children like that, and they didn't figure that the children, and they don't understand why can't the children figure it out for themselves. And when the children do figure it out for themselves, they're like, what the fuck is that? What is orgasmic birthing? Why don't you go and get a job like everybody else? Well, they're trying to put people in artificial depth at work. I'm not creating a pack of assassins. No. Over this woman, she locked herself inside the shelter. She doesn't let anybody in. And I was like, of course. There are going to be bombs on the entire city if the people are escaping from rape into the shelters. I was like, but that's her work. No, it's not. Rape is not work. Like, what did you think? A person would be raped, take drugs for being raped, not even have, and what will happen? Or they don't even see that as a person, not because they're racist, because they're just too busy with their lives that they just pass by. And this was important because there is racism, and there is marginalized societies, and there's gender issues, but then there are just the people that are just too busy, and the person down the street is kind of like, well, that's a person, like like they're there. I mean, like they're like their housing. Why do people want to live in the street? Like they don't. Now we can't blame them because it ain't like they grew with parenting. And they were the most subjected to what people call the matrix. But also, they're also the ones that kind of like, I don't know, became aware, but there is still that dissonance. So there's a lot of things that are very unreasonable, and when people see that, and they see that too, think about millennials. We grew up, a lot of us, learning about the mathematician that thought that a problem that was one of the biggest quests in the world was homework. A lot of us grew up in that setting. It yields. Because somebody, people would ask us questions and we would tend to it and we would have an answer. Oh, wait a second. Oh, look at Genesis. Oh, we found the key to orgasmic birthing. Not subjugate the woman, not excel the woman that is subjugated. Allow people to have the yes, no, and maybe, and eat apples. Then all the way for Tissel, but people are just going to have orgasmic birthing, so the birthing will not be a punishment. They will not birth boys with sadness, and then there would be actually happy, thriving men and women. Or whatever gender, whatever they like to do with whatever they like, Okay, so we need to change the scriptures. That's unreasonable. That's the blasphemy. That's abomination. Wait a second. The Huguenots didn't, even though but the women lived there fine. That was the scripture. Exactly. The scripture was changed, but the life of the people that were different, and then the Catholic Church could persecute them as well. They actually didn't really challenge the Catholic Church scriptures or the concept of salvation. And even Mary Magdalene was accepting the torture of salvation, but finding meaning in the pain or something. Which, by the way, those who talk about orgasmic birthing as transmuting pain to power, they're still playing to the hand of extortion cults. You see, a millennial look at things. So, and for us, it's not something that's up in the air. These mindsets, they would dictate our working schedule. What we have to offer, and then we would look at these junctures in our lives, and then we actually would do the pitches. So we would be exposed also to the weird occult. And we say, hey, wait a second, that doesn't yield. There was this product, let's say the safety car. There was this product, my womb recognizes this product from, and I understand it connected to that ritual. But the difference being is that it could have been orgasmic birthing, and it would better yield even, and then maybe, the divorce settlement that was kind of like a butterfly effect of that ritual that I never consented to. Maybe that wouldn't have been even a divorce. Maybe if the teachings of launching a product would be like orgasmic birthing, but that would stand up to, I don't know, this church and this society and that intelligence, so on and so forth. But we see that embodied psychic awareness yields way better timelines and way more accurate. And now this begins to unravel the various fungal things in society. And when we the millennials meet that, we're not unaware, because it's like we never coated our teeth. So, some of us did. Because if there's a problem, we take care of the problem. We say, okay, if there's a problem, we need to solve the problem. And you say, okay, well, there was this line in the Bible said the teeth of the children will not rot because the parents ate unripe fruit. So what we need to heal our teeth is to discontinue the action of eating unripe fruit. What is unripe fruit? Oh, there's Epstein dossiers. Wait a second. Also, union is not tantric. Even in self-pleasure is eating unripe fruit. And it does create issues with the teeth. And then we speak the truth, and people find it funny. It's like it's overwhelming, it's emotionally fluting, but hey, like we're not here to run around like, being treated as a pack of criminals, where we take responsibility over our life, our well-being, and we understand. When I remember when I looked at the concept of laziness, and I was like, something doesn't make sense here. And I looked at the concept of success, and I was like, well, success, but well, being happy or being fulfilled. And I'm like, oh, orgasmic birthing now makes a lot of sense. Because if we go to the structure of society, at every layer of society, for there to be accommodation for orgasmic birthing, the priestess that didn't have, let's say, orgasmic birthing will have even, and I'm talking even about myself, okay, being in the process for or learning teachings from orgasmic birthing around life changes is an idea that for sure people that, or women that had, let's say, orgasmic birthing, there was not the transmuting pain to power, but actually orgasmic birthing, it's interesting to see how they see the world. And then we have also the notion, it's like, yeah, they had this experience. They see the world in that way. So the people that don't see the world in that way, first of all, we need to see how do we facilitate for them to be able to have an experience like orgasmic birthing is not transmuting pain to power, but living in a good and balanced alignment between rest and work, and bringing pleasure, being attuned with pleasure. Now we also have the bone structure, which is the alignment of the fascia, and that affects the nervous system, it affects the will to be here. And definitely talking about the lymph nodes, but we're also talking about the endocrine system, we're talking about the bone marrow. And this is something that, how do I say, we can't neglect. Now when the world is changing so much, of course world changes need to be more aligned of orgasmic birthing. And when I take a look at the teachings around that, they usually are including of, let's say, people who are considered marginalized or BIPOC people. They're not so class-based. And we see social processes of challenging the caste system. Noting that there are billionaires, communists. And understanding that, I think a lot of businesses had this notion that, no, they can't just replace the employees by AI and that being okay. Now, here is the thing. Of course, they can integrate AI, but integrating AI in a way that supports each and every individual being able to have orgasmic birthing, or life transitions as orgasmic birthing. Now, the people that have resistance to that, they're stemming from within, they try to project about the people that talk about it or whatnot. It regs all the feelings of it. I ran into that teaching when Uranus was in Taurus, and then when Uranus is crossing my Chiron. Chiron is where basically would have feelings of inadequacy, and Uranus is basically revolutionize our ability to see where we have felt inadequate in a societal Kundalini perspective. Where was the Kundalini stagnant at the time of our birth? That's Uranus transiting Chiron, is as much as I can see it. So it has the right amount of detachment to be able to self-reflect, but also to reflect on society, because it's an intergenerational planet. And also Chiron is. And we see that the body rejects the ability. A lot of people may have had problem getting pregnant. Listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. The body rejects the attempts to oppressively manage or engineer the sovereign, or everybody's born. It's like everybody is born into being sovereign, but not from the sense that the infant has the responsibility on the people that rape them. Neptune in Aries reminds us that people are entitled to their sovereignty even in time where they are in helpless situation. Of course, they need help, but if something around the help is not compatible, they're entitled to adjustment. Now, the more we are in alignment with orgasmic birthing, the more we can stay attuned to the people that can't speak. Now, the notion that violating that resulted in genocide, democide, and so on and so forth, and the understanding that this is nature. If you violate the person or the infant, you grow war criminals or criminals against humanity. If you prevent healing to the level that people can heal, we are preventing crimes against humanity. If you try to do peace by oppressing people, it will backfire. And this is removing the stagnations in people's perceptions. Also in the perception, if I think about, me experiencing Uranus going over my Chiron. Also in my perceptions. It didn't make sense because people needed to put people in a binding positions where they can't live and can't die, because they harvested that to have more monuments that control population or enslave population. And they saw in it power because they were not coming from orgasmic birthing. And that power always collapsed on them. This is why even when they come to share their power, people are rethinking the power paradigms. And even when they try to incorporate the teachings of, let's say, orgasmic birthing, people are like, no, it's not transmuting pain to power. When people are enslaved, their pain is transmuted into power, and there's this gas station, that petrol station, gets into everybody's teeth. And all the, how should I say that, class-based or all those artificial divisions really collapse. They really collapse. in a very practical, embodied point of view that is also spiritual, but is also very connected to the physical being. It's not a philosophy that's over there. It's how babies actually come to the world if we want the world to have life in it. And the people that meet that with, the people that meet that with a lot of like baggage are the people that essentially, if they think about the origin of their baggage, is that they didn't have this access to orgasmic birthing, or that they weren't born in orgasmic birthing. And if any feeling of adequacy is having its residues removed, and people have to deal with their own feelings of adequacy without being able to project that onto a person, and that person will not just accept that projection. And all of the weird, even occultistic things that people did that were reliant on something that's not orgasmic birthing, they bubble up to the surface. None of the blame, shame would do, because the litmus test is everybody being able to have orgasmic birthing as life changes. I see a lot of, when people try to control or to manage others, particularly occultistically, is where they run into the most. It's like all the junk of the things that they did is bubbling up to the surface. Because people ask, like, okay, I work hard, why investment not yielding? I know if I'm going to try to find a job, the job is going to have to be supportive of orgasmic birthing, and supportive of me going through processing my feelings of inadequacy in receiving that working environment. And I'm going to need to feel honored and respected genuinely. If it's not there, it's no wonder that every attempt to work has failed. If it's there, the foundations for something to actually yield, meaning that if the business model, I don't know, does not accommodate for life for my children's children, then we can work on the business model. We can change things. We can brainstorm things. We can try different things. That's an environment that can be compatible. And so everything that's not that, first of all, is unreasonable, because when we think about, oh, what is the compatible environment? We're like, oh, of course, it's basis. And it puts how should I say, it puts a reflection to society from the core that they can't project onto the person that talks about it without being visible in their projection. We also think about the environment infrastructure. It needs to support orgasmic birthing. Doesn't work with, let's say, people taking their morning walk across the neighborhood and people thinking that they are on a job raping themselves and supposedly making money or whatnot. It exposes the entire society's perceptions. Think about it. Somebody comes, I remember I was working at the garden, and then naturally I was digging a half moon, so I was sitting to rest. A guy came and he said, you should not sit here, maybe sit next to the stairs, maybe you want cigarette, because people see you, they think thoughts. I said, okay, you take gun. Anybody that even thinks thoughts, you shoot them right between the eyes. Cigarette is not healthy for the body. And so we understand which of us is closer to being in a society where women have orgasmic birthing, or when life transitions are seen as orgasmic birthing. And when people are so confined in their fungal perceptions that they cannot even see the concept of a woman, a bomb. Because it's not about, this woman is not like that. No. Do women in your society have orgasmic birthing? When you open a book of prayer, is the story of creation a story of orgasmic birthing? Are the relations between people equal and supportive? If not, your whole concept of what a woman is, remember when Tom Jacobs, rest in peace, talked about Black Moon Lilith, and he had wonderful Lilith teachings and wonderful wealth teachings. And he talked about true Lilith. He said, true Lilith, when we talk about true Lilith versus other versions of Lilith, he said, if we don't ask true Lilith, it's like asking a blow-up doll what a woman is like. Now, for most people that grow in society where women don't have orgasmic birthing, they ended up doing just that because they asked a raped infant that was tortured, and while they were growing on fantasies that were to begin with skewed by torture, what a woman is like. And sometimes in the most naive way, so that they can, if I think about all the courses that were of this, every place had their slava that promised women to everyone. And then there was the women equivalent because they wanted to be feministic. Men love bitches. Yeah, but you can't orgasm on it. It's nothing, but it doesn't bring orgasmic birthing. Even the more tender teachings were like, yeah, never really, always be mysterious, always this, always that. And I'm like, what about cervical orgasms? Now, when people think about orgasmic birthing, and then immediately she was shocked and bewildered because she was like, no, she was thinking about it as the pressure of the man for her to orgasm. And I was like, no. If you think about orgasmic birthing, it's a cervical. Yeah, people arouse themselves externally, but it's also cervical. And of course, it's a spiritual experience and so on and so forth. You tell me that these women at OnlyFans are having cervical orgasms that are orgasmic birthing and embodied? Of course not. But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about women that were married, trying to have children. And I'm not saying those teachings were bad teachings. They taught us to, I don't know, some of the teachings were good. But that notion that never allows for orgasmic birthing to occur permeates society, economy, cosmology, spirituality, and so on. And to guilt is not, like I said, not just men. Reason. That's a reason that reasons. And when people try to decide for people what is right for them, here's the thing. Without the concept of orgasmic birthing, that is not transmuting pain to power, but actually orgasmically birthing. Then even the connection to the yes, no, and maybe of people is weird. And then they get into economy that's not yielding. It's like, oh, they get into debt, yeah, but they can't pay that debt. And they also can't be enslaved because they're too sick to work. Way more ecosystemic reason. And the people that are in a hurry, they have to rethink their deadlines. What are people in a hurry working for something that they would be lonely upon retirement, the children will literally, physically, and fiscally not be able to afford to care for them for themselves or to pay for somebody that will with their own money. Definitely not if we're going to have a baby boom right now. Sometimes people just work because of the dread of that. But that doesn't shift the timeline in itself. And if people think, oh, what would I do to talk about it? It's not about talking about it. It's about taking the time to brainstorm, which is a part of building something. And sharing that brainstorm. Now, we're going to have a new moon tomorrow. Tomorrow, today, depending on where people live. Now, when people try to make people fall or knock people down, they try to get into their consciousness and knock them down. Just think of how irrational it is, of how self-undermining it is to try to manage another person, sovereign being. To try to make a person fall. Like there is a system to take care of that person if they fall. And there isn't, because people were based on raping people. Orgasmic birthing cannot occur in a place where polycot is being raped. When the domestic union is not of orgasmic birthing and joyous relations, nobody is eager to build one. People will say, okay, they're going to live in their own, maybe even small houses per person. And it's also the thing that changes everything, because when people have the notion of life change that is orgasmic, then everything receives a proportion where people deal with challenges on the go. It's not that it's not challenging, but they're able to deal with that challenge. They're able to brainstorm. It's also why I'm bringing that concept again and again as I'm thinking about, let's say, the world problems or issues in my life, or what am I creating in my life. Way better approach. And everything that's not aligned with that is simply something that is, I'm sorry, like a fungal infection coming to dissolve. Again, not the person, the approach, the perspective, the behavior that tries to harm me. The behavior that thinks it has any authority to tell me who I am. I alone decide who I am. Right? Remember those Tom Jacobs solar plexus? But this is where the occult practices that are trying to define for people who they are, they begin to dissolve like a fungal infection beginning to dissolve, like cavities dissolving from the teeth. Because it ain't like that doctor that had this doctor room in Epstein Island could treat anybody's teeth. So now I'm just gonna watch more orgasmic birthing stories. And while I have my morning walk, they say people should walk at least 10 kilometers per day. I don't know if I walk 10 kilometers per day. But this has been an hour, almost an hour walking, I guess.